Welcome in to another episode of the Need for Seeds College Basketball Podcast presented by the Betting the Pitch Podcast Network. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner. I'm joined as always by at Big East Ben. We're doing a little bit earlier this week to accommodate my flight to Kansas City and then travel over to Lawrence, Kansas for a big upset victory, but we'll get to that game later on our rundown. Big East Ben, how has newfound monogamy been treating you?
Strong, 77% clip.
It's pretty good. I think that'll pay some wedding bills. We'll put it that way. We're gonna go through a 6-pack of games on this episode, including the game I just mentioned. But we will come up with best bets end of show. If you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out. Patreon.com. Just a real underscore G Warner. All lines are actually made up by us. Usually they're quoted on BetOnline or Sportsbetting.ag, which there are links. If you are not members of either of those sites, get a 50% match bonus on first time deposit at BetOnline or 100% match up to $500 at sportsbetting.ag, their sister site. Those will be on the podcast descriptions on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. We'll start with our first game, Alabama visiting Kentucky. And we're going to project Kentucky a 1-point favorite in this game, which if you can tell me what Kentucky's going to do, you probably will make a ton of money. So go ahead, Ben. What do you think about this game?
So you got Alabama coming off a miraculous win versus Florida at home. I think they were down that entire game, somehow
They
forced
were.
it overtime.
They were.
And then you have Kentucky somehow letting I think it was a 15-point lead at LSU slip through their fingers. No matter what Rob Dillingham was able to do down the stretch, LSU was able to pull that one off. So team, you have a desperate Kentucky team at Rupp where they haven't played well this season. At one point, they lost 3 games in a row. Obviously, both offenses are scorching hot. What's interesting is the defensive splits. So you have a Kentucky team that actually plays way worse defense at Rupp than on the road. Alabama, pretty solid defensive unit in Tuscaloosa, about 35th in the country defensive efficiency. Away from Tuscaloosa, absolutely plummets. 14th in the SEC in terms of defensive efficiency on the road. Given that, tough to figure these teams out. All I do know is there's going to be a lot of points. I'm going to take the over in this one. Massive over. KenPom currently has it at 178, but I think this game is going to be in the 90s.
So interestingly enough, easy for me to say, Torvik has this 92-91 Alabama as the final, so 183. I can't imagine we're going to have a total that high. My question about the total in general, is there a number you would not go over? Because ultimately, I don't know where this line's going to come out. I will admit, I tried a variance type of strategy maybe 10 years ago in college basketball and learned that the numbers that I spit out for totals were not very efficient. And betting the variances, I just lost too much money for me to continue the experiment. I'll put it that way. Like at what price do you start getting concerned about the over here? Like, does one, I mean, because I would expect if you're an odds maker, you're putting out numbers, you do not expect to get much under money at all. Or is it just as simple as you play over as soon as this number comes out so you don't take the risk of it climbing?
I would play it up to 195.
195. Okay, so I mean
Yeah.
that's a big score. Possibly there's an overtime possibility here as well, as we just saw Alabama go, as you said. I mean, they were trailing that whole game. I wanted to bet Florida. I stayed off of it and then basically hate watched the whole time, hoping that Alabama would pull away. And they never pulled away, to say the least. They barely even took a lead, it felt. And then, of course, in overtime, where dogs go to die. Fortunately, that was not one of the cases. Move next to a fairly different style of basketball game. I wonder, Ben picks the game, so I wonder if there's a reason he put these back to back next to each other. We have North Carolina, the Tar Heels, off to a great start. I'm coincidentally wearing a UNC basketball jersey, but that's not related to fanhood, I promise. Though I did enjoy my time. Shout out to Davis Rand on my trip to Chapel Hill way back when. We have UNC visiting Virginia. Very different style, especially Virginia coming off a drastic blowout, beatdown, whatever you want to call it, that I believe both members of the Need for Seeds podcast had Virginia Tech in that game, which was great and probably speaks to the 77% post monogamy for at Big East Ben. I'll make North Carolina a 4.5 point favorite here at Virginia, which feels a little steep. But what do you think about this one?
Yeah, so you got Virginia absolutely being clowned on Twitter for their 34-point loss to Tech, 41 points in that effort. That was coming off a 49-point performance in the win versus Wake Forest at home. North Carolina, they had that start to conference play. They won 3 straight on the road. Everyone was crowning them. And then they've had some slip ups since the loss to Georgia Tech, the loss at home to Clemson. Another rare bet for me, but I'm going totals again. I'm going to go under the total of 130. North Carolina actually elevates their defense away from Chapel Hill. And you have a desperate Virginia team trying to, I guess, probably 11, 10 seed right now, on that higher end of the bubble line. They're going to be desperate to enforce their style. They're going to be desperate to slow the game down, play within their tempo. I think this goes under 130.
Under 130. So that's the projection probably from Ken Palm. Looks like Torvik has it a little bit lower at 126. Probably another scenario. See whatever number comes out and grab it as soon as it opens. Just based on Virginia and the building of Tony Bennett's career, I really think his biggest wins have come against this North Carolina team, usually with Roy Williams, but you could say Hubert Davis was on that staff and was essentially using that post to post or that big to big double. And really, I think that's going to limit the amount of shot attempts for Armando Bacot inside and really put this a lot more on the North Carolina perimeter. RJ Davis still seems like the scariest player in the ACC, maybe in the country, even from my few experiences of fading North Carolina so far this season. I'm pretty interested in Virginia's response to, I mean, it probably should have been 2 losses in a row. They were leading Wake Forest for most of that game, but never were able to separate. And then the incredible 1 for 11 free throw shooting. I would expect a response, but also maybe you would have expected that before they lost by 34 points on the road at their biggest rival in state. So I'm not really sure what to expect from this Virginia team. I'm hoping that they win this game and stay in the tournament because I want to be against them with what's probably a mid-major 6 seed or something like that, maybe a San Diego State type. I think that'd be a great matchup and a good spot for us to bet against Virginia. I will take Virginia against the spread though in this one. And in that first game, instead of you went over in Alabama, Kentucky, I'll go Kentucky with that -1 type of spread. Move next to Villanova visiting UConn. UConn coming off its first loss in forever after they gave up, I think, 15 threes or 14 threes to Creighton and at Big East Bend. Surprise, surprise, we got a couple of Big East games coming up back to back, but Villanova, we're projecting a 10-point underdog on the road at UConn. So what do you think about that one?
Danny Hurley is angry right now, and you wouldn't like him when he's angry because he will knock you out. That was
Of the tournament, I guess is what
no.
he.
Did you see the other angle?
I did not see the other
So
angle. No.
there's another angle
So
where he actually.
let me jump in. So there's a video posted by some Creighton fan group, whatever fan Twitter account that has Danny Hurley walking up to what looks like the student section and will say, "I will knock you out." I don't know if there's an F word in between that, but okay. Other angle. Go ahead.
So there's the angle behind him where the guy goes, you can appreciate the context. He says, if we play you in the tournament, I will knock you out. But you have a second angle I saw last night that is like right next to him, in front of him. And he says, if you reach over, meaning the banister, I will knock you out. So the people's initial interpretation of the context was correct. Um, just hilarious. Just the drama in college basketball this year with the coaches has been insane. With in 1 week we had the Danny Hurley incident. You had Penny Hardaway throwing his entire team under the bus and basically saying, "I'm doing a great job. I don't know what these guys' problems are." And then you have Rick Pitino.
Yeah.
And did you hear the West Virginia kid? They asked him about it because he played under Pitino at Iona. And he said, he told a story where he did not box out at practice. And Patino said, if you don't box out, I'm going to chop you up into 7 pieces and send you back to bleeping Houston or Detroit or wherever the bleep you're from. Uh,
Oh my God. Yeah, I would totally run through a wall for that guy who has sex with random women that end up extorting him on restaurant tables in Louisville. All right. So I guess I mean that's the background you get in the Need for Seats podcast. You don't get that everywhere else. I mean Rick Pitino, a gem. I think it's the last book I read was his Success is a Choice. And I believe in success rather than getting chopped into 7 pieces, and sent back to a random city across the United States of America.
but all-time story. He's losing his mind. We don't have St. John's on the docket, but I'll probably be fading them this weekend, whoever they're playing. But they
They
might
got
be
a
off.
big win against Georgetown, though. What do you mean?
Georgetown played well in that game. They kept it close.
Yeah, it was a big win
Georgetown
against.
covered in that, I believe, right?
I think it was a close one, yes,
Yeah.
which sounds a big enough underdog at this point every time they play. Okay, so I guess you didn't want to fall for my little or my wow, what team does Rick Pitino coach? St. John's. Okay, so Villanova getting 10 from UConn on the road. You expecting a little bit of an angry Danny Hurley, not threatening to beat up opposing fan bases over at the end of this game?
Yeah. I mean, it might be fresh in my mind, but the absolute beatdown they put on Marquette at home last weekend, 28-point win. This game's actually going to be played in their campus gym, Gamble, which is an absolute nut house. I've seen a couple games over the years. It's one of those, old, very thick wall, concrete stadiums like, the Oracle where the Warriors play, where it really holds in the noise well. Place is going to be a madhouse. Connecticut's going to be angry. They're going to be able to enforce their style. Villanova's been playing well of late, won 3 straights. Seton Hall, Georgetown, and Butler. Granted, 2 of those games were at home, but I like the angry Huskies here in a bounce back spot. Best team in basketball, easily cover the 10-point spread.
Best team in basketball, so no concern after getting ripped apart by the Creighton Blue Jays.
That was an outlier game for Creighton. I mean, Ashworth went off. They shot 50% from 3. UConn didn't even try to mount a response through the 3-point game. I think they only attempted 8 in that game and hit one of them. It was a strange game plan. They were actually able to get kind of back into it, back to 10 at least, playing their style. But it was there didn't seem like a sense of desperation to try to pull that one out. I feel like they kind of waved the white flag a little bit early.
Which is surprising because they got off to a great start. Clean got in foul trouble, and that kind of ended the great start. But honestly, I backed Creighton in that one and was really not happy with the start of that game. And I was like, here we go. I've now look at me, this idiot trying to bet against UConn. I still feel like there are some flaws this UConn team. They have so much of a group mentality that I just wonder if they lack potential stars like the All-American types and the NBA draft picks that basically won them the national championship last year. But that's yet to be seen. And of course, they've won so many games. They had so many in a row. I guess they were I guess due to potentially lose one, and Creighton had to shoot out of their minds in order to build up a big lead. And then, as you mentioned, UConn were able to get back into it. I think Villanova is going to play this one close. I'm too scared of playing against UConn at home. 10 points doesn't seem like a lot to them ultimately. So I think I'll play UConn with you, even though I'm allergic to 10-point favorites. Move next, stay in this conference to Butler visiting Seton Hall. Looks like Butler a 3-point underdog on the road. So what do we think about this one? This is also a Saturday matchup. What do you got for here?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to play the trends on this one. Butler has fallen off the map. They've lost now 3 straight. Against the competition was pretty good. Marquette, Creighton, and Nova. I was really disappointed in their effort in that Creighton game. They were up by, I think they had a 10 or 12-point lead in the first half, and then absolutely shat their pants in the second half. Just a bad effort. Seton Hall's responded well after that absolute beatdown versus Villanova, where I think Shaheen Holloway really got into his guys, and they responded with consecutive wins over Xavier and Xavier and St. John's on the road, which
Yep.
prompted the the Ricky Pitino outburst. So I like Cedar. I think the recent success gets the fans into a bit more at the Pro. They play pretty well there this season, despite claims about lack of student support. I don't know if you've been following on Big East Twitter
Go
at
ahead.
all.
No, break
But
it
yeah,
down for us.
I like this. Just a lot of compare and contrasting the student section for the UConn game versus then the student section for the Georgetown game or the Providence game or even the double overtime effort against the Creighton game. So
Triple,
I
triple,
think
triple
you know
overtime, triple
triple
overtime.
overtime,
I
triple
can't forget it
overtime.
because I
So
lost a bet on that one.
yeah. So I mean, KenPom has this at a 3-point spread for the Pirates. I like the home team here within a possession.
Yeah, I think that spread feels a little low to me. I think at 3 we play it and don't even think about it. Maybe it comes a little bit higher. I don't know, but basically this entire year, ever since Ken Palm became a household name, it seems like that's what the sports books are opening spreads at. So if you're fast enough, if you got the Twitter fingers that are trigger fingers or however that goes, then go grab Seton Hall at one of the places that's in the podcast description that will give you a bonus to join and make a first time deposit. Move next to the game that I'm attending before we get to our best bets coming end of show. I will be making the trip to the Fog. I don't have tickets yet, so if someone has, I don't know, a love for the Need for Seeds podcast or just for me in general and wants to hand some out, doubt it. But I'll be figuring something. Ben shaking his head because he loves buying tickets long, long times in advance. He doesn't believe in the walk up to the game and buy a ticket, but I'm not sure if this is a world where scalpers even take Venmo, as I pretty much use StubHub or whatever exclusively. I should stop saying company names because they're not paying us. But let's go to this Texas visiting Kansas game. Texas, another one of those teams that seems to play better away from home, which is surprising after basically Texas playing in a mausoleum for a decade, finally moving to the Moody Center last year, and things actually looking like a real home court advantage. But it hasn't worked out very well for Texas this year. I think they're a middling 8-9 seed projection right now. Torvik only has Texas a 6-point underdog on the road at Kansas. That seems short to me. That's about the Baylor range, and Baylor was, I'm pretty sure, a 1-point or 2-point underdog. Well, I mean, maybe that's calling Texas and Baylor equal. I'm not sure I would agree with that. I would expect Texas to be a +8 or maybe even higher than that. What are you thinking about that game before I walk in and tell you what I'm thinking?
Yeah, I mean the again, neither of us are sold on Kansas. The Fog doesn't seem as intimidating, or they don't elevate their level of play at the Fog as they have in years past. They squeaked by Baylor, with the caveat that McCullough was out that game. Squeaked by Cincinnati, 5-point win. They obviously had the big win over Houston. Um, Texas, yeah, like you said, get some good road wins. One at TCU, one at Oklahoma. I like them staying in this for the first 20 minutes. I will probably play. I will take the points first half for the Longhorns.
I guess since we're just going
And
exotics.
we'll figure that out when the line comes out.
Yeah. So I mean that's usually cut the full game in half and maybe add a point is usually how it goes, depending on how big it is. If Texas, let's say they're an 8-point underdog, I mean that would probably be 4 or 5. I don't know that I have as much faith. I pretty much was waiting to go to a Texas at Kansas game at the Fog until I felt Texas had a good chance to win, which never came, and now we're leaving the conference. So this is the last chance, and that's why I'm going essentially. I've got a flight in a couple hours. Forgot to check in. Got a nice CO7, so hopefully I can not get a middle seat on the flight to Kansas City. We'll see. But I am pretty interested, and I feel like this is one of those games where Texas can win or they lose by 20. And I'm hoping it's the former, but it's probably the latter. So I'll lay the 8 on Kansas, though I will be certainly rooting the opposite direction. So it's time for our best bets. Before we get there, already mentioned if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. We will be cutting this into a reel, or I will be before we post this for the Saturday game slate. So if you want a shorter version of the Need for Seeds podcast, though you miss out on Ben Rants, plus Big East Twitter student section commentary. I would highly recommend listening to the full episode, but I understand people have lives, jobs, and other things, unlike myself. So you might just want to follow on Instagram at @the_real_G_Warner or on YouTube, and you can get these in 1 minute increments because that is the limit. So Big East Ben, give us your best bet, and then I will follow up with mine.
Yeah, my best bet. We are doing basketball bedlam. The Oklahoma Sooners visiting Oklahoma State. Ken Palm has this at 4 points, +4 for the Cowboys. And I'm going to take those +4 points. Oklahoma State played very well recently. Big wins. They actually absolutely ran BYU out of the gym in that one last weekend. And then a surprising road win at Cincinnati. So they're playing their best basketball this season. Oklahoma has struggled, on the road. They've picked up a couple wins at Kansas State, at West Virginia. Those don't mean as much to me as in years past. Had that puzzling or had the loss at UCF, and then I've obviously been rolled by the better teams in the Big 12 away from Norman. So I like Oklahoma State in this one. Again, I'm playing the trends, playing the best basketball of the season, rivalry game. There's juice. Back the Cowboys.
Yeah, we'll see how much juice there is. I do worry that, yes, Oklahoma State generally being the lower little brother in this competition. Plus, this might be the last time these teams play for a while because they're in different conferences. I don't know if they will end up arranging a home and home series, but that's been so hard for Texas A&M to do. / has never happened really. So maybe it won't, but that might end up juicing the crowd a little bit more. I also feel like it's a time of year where the bad teams that have been bad all year are now underrated. And certainly when there's some light at the end of the tunnel and maybe some possibilities that Oklahoma State's playing better basketball, I like that side. Plus, I just feel like Oklahoma is running out of gas. And I think that narrative of them being athletic and talented all of a sudden, I think that is getting long in the tooth. So I guess it's now time for my best bet. So let's jump in. So this is the real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. And you just heard at Big East Ben on the Need for Seeds College Basketball podcast. He gave his best bet. He gave Oklahoma State a 4-point underdog at home to Oklahoma. For my best bet, I'm going to go with Pittsburgh, a 3-point favorite, let's say, at home against Virginia Tech. These lines are suggested at this point based on openers because we're recording this pretty early, but we're also giving you the tools to go bet openers at BetOnline or Sportsbetting.ag. There are links in the podcast description if you would like to join at either of those websites. But I'm playing Pittsburgh. They're, to me, a short favorite and coming off a 33-point loss on the road at Wake Forest. Good spot for them to bounce back and potentially defend the three a little bit better after allowing Wake Forest to make 50% of their threes. They get Virginia Tech coming off a 34-point beatdown of their in-state and hated Virginia rival. I think this is a bad spot for Virginia Tech going on the road, shooting a lot of threes. They don't go in, and Pittsburgh covers the spread. So grab Oklahoma State +4 and Pittsburgh -3. And that'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitches presents the Need for Seeds College Basketball podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Please subscribe. If you leave a 5-star review with something college basketball related, we'll have at Big East Ben. He'll act it out for you. Unfortunately, no one has been doing that this season, so it's time to do it. We only have, a few episodes left to go. We also might have some good news in that direction, but I'll keep that under wraps and make sure you look out and make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed because you might see maybe an extra episode, something like that coming up. At Big East Ben, do you have anything to say before we sign off and get ready for a glorious weekend filled with winners and monogamy?
Have fun in KC. Have some barbecue and caribou lose for me.
Caribou lose. What's that?
151 rum, pineapple juice. You know the song? Tech Nine.
No.
Originated in Kansas City, Missouri since 1999, baby.
No, I guess I need to learn a little bit more about Tech Nine with a number 9 in it before I get on the plane. Apparently,
maybe if we had any editing skills, we should maybe have that as our intro.
Well, when Texas takes this victory this weekend, I will figure out how to incorporate a song, and then I'm sure we'll get sued, and then the Need for Seeds podcast will need to change its name for next year. But anyway, thank you as always at Big East Ben for coming in here with your energy, enthusiasm, and getting this podcast done so I can get to the airport. We will talk to you all very soon, and I'll just say it. Keep an eye out for another episode coming up instead of just a Saturday episode going forward. 2 per week. Let's do it. Newfound monogamy. And let's find some winners. Talk to you all soon.